Picture this. It's a freezing winter morning in 1944. You are standing in a quiet, snow-covered field in Montana. Suddenly, you look up and see a massive, white, jellyfish-like orb silently drifting 30,000 feet above your house. A few moments later, you hear a high-pitched whistle, followed by an earth-shattering explosion that turns the nearby forest into a towering inferno. You have just witnessed a mainland aerial attack on the United States. But there was no pilot. There was no bomber aircraft. The weapon that just detonated in your backyard traveled 5,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean, and it was built out of paper and potato glue. Between November 1944 and April 1945, the Japanese Empire launched over 9,000 of these silent, bizarre weapons directly at the United States. It was the world's first intercontinental weapon system. But the most shocking part of this story isn't how the Japanese built them. It's how the United States defeated them not with anti-aircraft guns, but with an unprecedented psychological weapon: absolute silence. This is the story of the Fugo fireball, the tragic deaths it caused in Oregon, and the brilliant forensic science that unraveled a 5,000-mile mystery. To understand why Japan was launching paper balloons across the ocean, we have to look at the psychological damage of the Doolittle raid. In April 1942, American bombers struck the Japanese capital of Tokyo. The physical damage was minimal, but the psychological blow was catastrophic. The Japanese homeland, considered sacred and untouchable, had been violated. The Japanese military demanded revenge. They wanted to set the American West Coast on fire, triggering massive forest fires that would divert U.S. resources and cause widespread civilian panic. But Japan had a massive problem: distance. They didn't have heavy bombers capable of flying 5,000 miles across the Pacific and returning. They needed a delivery system, and they found one hidden 30,000 feet in the sky. In the 1920s, Japanese meteorologists had discovered a high-altitude, fast-moving river of air flowing straight from Japan to North America. Today, we call it the jet stream. In the 1940s, it was a closely guarded military secret. Scientists calculated that if a balloon could be placed into this airstream during the winter months, it could cross the Pacific Ocean in just 30 to 100 hours. They had their delivery system. Now, they just had to build the bomb. The engineering required to keep a balloon aloft at exactly 30,000 feet for 3 days is a nightmare. If the balloon flies during the day, the sun heats the hydrogen gas, causing it to expand. If it goes too high, it pops. If it flies at night, the freezing temperatures, minus 50 degrees Celsius, cause the gas to compress, and the balloon drops into the ocean. The Japanese engineered a brilliant, almost steampunk mechanical brain to solve this. They attached an aluminum wheel to the balloon carrying 32 sandbags. It was wired with aneroid barometers. If the balloon dropped below 30,000 feet, the barometer triggered a small gunpowder charge that blew a sandbag off the rig, lightening the load and sending the balloon back up. If it went too high, a valve automatically vented hydrogen. It would bounce along the jet stream like a skipping stone. Once the final sandbag was dropped, the mechanism assumed it was over America. The final charges would drop a 33-pound high-explosive bomb and 4 incendiary firebombs before triggering a self-destruct fuse that burned the balloon to ash. But what do you build a 33-foot diameter balloon out of during a wartime rubber shortage? Paper. Specifically, washi paper made from the mulberry bush. And who builds them? With the men fighting in the Pacific, the Japanese military conscripted thousands of teenage schoolgirls. Working in massive theaters and sumo wrestling arenas, these girls painstakingly glued layers of paper together using konnyaku, a paste made from the devil's tongue potato. They were told they were building a secret weapon that would win the war, but they had no idea they were building the world's first intercontinental ballistic missiles. On November 3, 1944, the first balloons were released into the winds of Honshu. 2 days later, an American Navy patrol boat off the coast of California spotted a ragged piece of paper floating in the water. Soon, reports started flooding in. A balloon exploded in Wyoming. Another landed in Montana. They were spotted in Alaska, Mexico, and even as far east as Michigan. The US military was baffled. Where were they coming from? German submarines? Secret Japanese internment camps within the US? The mystery was solved by one of the most brilliant forensic flexes of World War II. The military handed intact sandbags recovered from unexploded balloons to the military geology unit. The geologists put the sand under microscopes. They didn't just look at it, they read it like a barcode. They found microscopic fossils of marine life, foraminifera, and specific mineral compositions containing titanium and hypersthene. By cross-referencing this with pre-war geological surveys of Japan, the American scientists were able to pinpoint the exact two specific beaches on the Japanese island of Honshu where the sand had been scooped up. They knew exactly where the launch sites were. The US military knew the balloons were coming from Japan. They knew the Japanese intent was to cause mass panic. So, the US government made a radical, brilliant decision. They asked the American media to shut up. In January 1945, the US Office of Censorship sent a memo to every newspaper and radio station in the country, requesting a total publicity blackout regarding the balloons. They explained that if the media reported on where the balloons landed, Japanese intelligence would use that data to adjust their altitudes and fix their targeting. And the American media actually listened. Not a single word was printed. Back in Japan, military leaders tuned their radios to American broadcasts, waiting to hear reports of massive forest fires and screaming, panicked civilians. They heard nothing. Absolute silence. After 6 months and 9,000 balloons, the Japanese High Command assumed the project was a total failure. They believed the balloons were freezing and falling into the ocean. Believing the weapon was useless, Japan completely canceled the Fugo project in April 1945. The American blackout had worked perfectly. Silence had defeated the balloons. But that silence came with a terrible, heartbreaking cost. Because the public was never warned about the strange paper balloons, they didn't know to stay away from them. On May 5, 1945, weeks after Japan had already abandoned the project, Reverend Archie Mitchell took his pregnant wife Elsie and 5 Sunday school children for a picnic in the woods of Bly, Oregon. While Archie was unloading the car, Elsie and the children found a strange, white paper object lying in the brush. One of the children likely tugged on it. The anti-personnel bomb attached to the rigging detonated. Elsie Mitchell and the 5 children were killed instantly. They were the only mainland American civilian casualties of enemy action during the entire Second World War. Following the tragedy, the US government finally lifted the blackout and issued public warnings to stay away from the strange white balloons. Out of the 9,000 balloons launched by Japan, only about 300 were ever found in North America. They failed to start any major forest fires, largely because they landed during the damp, snow-covered winter months. Today, the Fugo balloon bombs are a bizarre, almost forgotten footnote in military history. But they represent a terrifying leap in warfare. They proved that oceans could no longer protect a nation. A weapon launched from Asia could randomly strike a church group in Oregon 3 days later. They were built by schoolgirls with potato glue, navigated by a river of air that nobody fully understood, and defeated by the deliberate silence of an entire nation. If the bizarre, tragic history of Japan's paper ICBMs changed how you look at World War II, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that real, unpolished history deserves to be heard. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the archives. What do you think? Could a media blackout like this ever work in today's world of smartphones and social media? Let us know in the comments below.